Okay, it's time to start our second session here. I made all those first 4 recordings to cover kind of the first major work. Now we're going to move into kind of the second session. We'll see what we cover here. This is going to map a little bit to that question I asked you about central tendency and dispersion. So I'll do some teaching over what that discussion board was about. If you look on the notes here on the agenda, there are 2 data sets. Data set 1 from a population. So in the population represents everyone. There are only 3 people in the population, and I give them the scores of 1, 2, and 3. In data set 2, it's another population. The numbers are 0, 2, and 4. So if we map it back to the questions of central tendency, chapter 3 tells you there are 3 measures of central tendency. And central tendency is basically one number that represents the data set. So when you're looking for central tendency, you try to find one number that really represents the data that you're looking at. And the 3 usual choices are the mean, the median, and the mode, the 3 M's. Most often we use the arithmetic mean. That's simply add up the scores and divide by the number in the sample. The median is the middle score. And the mode is the most frequent score. There's really no mode in this situation. The mean in both of these cases is 2, and the median, the middle score, is also 2. So by the measures of central tendency, in this particular situation, the data sets look pretty identical. So the data is kind of clustering in the middle with a mean of 2 in each one of these situations. We almost always use the mean as our primary measure of central tendency. There's only one situation where you would not use the mean, and that's a situation. It's very interesting. Probably the best example to go over is the example of, let's pretend you live in a neighborhood, and the neighborhood is kind of run down, and let's say a famous basketball star like Michael Jordan, I know I'm dating myself a few years here, decides to build a brand new house in the old neighborhood. Well, Michael Jordan would probably build a $6 million house in said neighborhood, and if all the other houses in that neighborhood are $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, and then you said, well, what's the average, what is the measure of central tendency that's going to represent that situation? If you got a mean there, Michael Jordan's house price is probably going to really skew things. So when we have an outlier, a number that's very extreme, we tend not to want to use the mean to represent a number representing central tendency. So I gave you in B there a data set. If you had the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1,000, if you computed the mean, it would be something like 250 or thereabouts. That number would really not represent any of that data whatsoever. So if you have an outlier, it is actually best to use the median. The median in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,000 case would be 3, and that would really best represent things. Finally, on page 42 of your textbook, they give an example in the learning check of a couple of frequency distribution. And if you look at that, there's one number of 5, there's 2 numbers of 4, there's 2 numbers of 3, there are 4 values of 2, and 1 of 1. So in this case, the mode, the most frequent score, is 2, and that would actually probably be your best measure of central tendency. So central tendency is where are the numbers clustering. You need to basically have one number to represent the data set. The mean is most often used. If you have an outlier, you tend to use the median. Okay, that'll do it. Thanks. Bye-bye.